Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Roxanne. If it's your first time here, then welcome. Today I want to tell you about my favorite adult fiction books of 2021. I think I've talked about every single one of these in a previous video, so I will link them down below. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them. I just want to showcase them one more time because they were the books that brought me the most joy. I don't like to say best of because I'm not really that kind of reviewer. I really go based off my emotional response to a book. Sometimes I can sort of really tell whether more objectively it's good or bad, but for the most part these are just books that I really enjoyed and really loved and really got something out of. And so I don't know, I prefer to say like favorites of rather than best of, just because I don't want to put that much pressure on myself that these really are like objectively the best books written or whatever of all of the ones that I've read in the past year. So in no particular order, the first is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first in the Kingkiller Chronicles. I think it was originally meant to be a trilogy. Now an announcement has been made relatively recently that it might expand. I don't know if it'll be the same timeline and storyline or if it'll be companion books, but regardless, I am really excited because I absolutely loved this book. I think this is a great book for readers who enjoy fantasy writing, setup, world, and that sort of type of world and writing that is incredibly immersive and that you feel like everything matters. Because before I have the second one somewhere up here, but I am going to reread the first before I go to the second one, because I do feel like every single aspect of the story is necessary and like you should remember as you continue on. And so this is the first this is the sort of first day of the telling of a story of the life of our main character. He's supposed to be the sort of most notorious, most amazing, badass, most everything wizard or person who's able to use magical abilities in the world. And so we are hearing the first day of what is supposed to be 3 days worth of stories about his life. If you enjoy high fantasy and, like I said, you are more into the writing and really kind of being immersed into the world rather than a lot of fast action pace storytelling when it comes to fantasy, then I would recommend this one. Then we have Girl, Woman, Other, and this is, I believe, 10 or 14 stories of individuals in mostly in the UK, but a little bit in the US. Mostly women, but we have different types of identities and sexual orientations, and it's a little bit of everything. It does feel very inclusive, which I loved. And it's one of these stories where every chapter is a different person and they sort of feel like mini stories within themselves, but they all come together and they all intermingle with each other's lives in some way or another. And the more you read, the more you see them all come up and matter in some significant way in the lives of other individuals that you've read about in the story. And I thought it was absolutely beautifully written. It was my first Aristo that I have read, and hopefully not my last. I understand what all the hype is about, and I really loved my time with it and really appreciated everything that I got out of the story. Then we have Can't Escape Love by Alyssa Cole, and this is kind of a in-between story. So this is a Reluctant Royals 2.6. So it's from her Reluctant Royals. It's kind of a novella actually, from the Reluctant Royals series, and I really loved it. We have Regina Hobbs and Gus, and one of the characters has a physical disability, I believe, And I read this in the beginning of the year, but I just remember really loving their story and really loving the agency of our main female character and how naturally they come together and fall in love. And it's just kind of Alyssa Cole at her best, and I really loved it, and I thought it was so much fun, and I highly recommend it if you are wanting to read the novellas in this series. I recommend that one. Then we have the first Elizabeth George that I read, which was Careless in Red. Not the first in her Detective Lindley series, just the first that I read. And I fell in love with her writing and her mysteries immediately. I haven't been able to stop thinking about them since I started. I have acquired a lot of them since and plan to get through the rest of the ones that I have and probably get more this year. I believe there's a new one coming out this year as well. And this is about a detective, Inspector Lindley. Detective Lindley works in Scotland Yard, and in this particular book he has decided to retire. Something happened in his personal life where he feels he must step away from detective work, and he goes on this sort of pilgrimage and inadvertently comes across a dead body and is pulled into the investigation and pulled in once again to detective work. And it's really just about the minutia of the mystery and the way that she is able to pull the community itself into the investigation, and the way that she's able to weave everything together. I just really fell in love with her storytelling and can't wait to continue on with the series. And then we have Infinite Country by Patricia Engel, and this is a Colombian immigration story, but none that I think you will have really ever read before. It is very unique in its storytelling and in its tone. It's mostly told through this daughter who's trying to get back to her mom and siblings who are in the United States. Her father is still in Colombia, and it's about sort of everybody trying to get back together somehow, and their beginnings and how and where they end up. And it's a beautiful story. It's beautifully told. It's very short and quick. But I think the thing that I love the most about it is the fact that it completely turns this idea of an immigration story on its head and leaves you feeling more hopeful and happy than distraught or really play into any of the sort of trauma porn that some immigration stories can really feed into. And so I just loved it, and I highly recommend it. Then we have Take a Hint, Danny Brown. This is the second in the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. I don't know if that's the one that's most loved by everybody, but I don't care. I've only read the first two, and I really loved both of them, but this one, I don't know, it just stuck out to me. I think the relationship between the two main characters is just really fun and really just great, and some of their steamy scenes were really nice. I am still sort of new into the whole romance smuttiness, so with regards to how those scenes are written and those stories are told, I am a newbie, so don't sort of base any of your opinions or your reading off of what I say. There are many more experienced romance readers out there, but I particularly I quite enjoyed it and had such a fun time with it, and I recommend that series. I will be reading the third this year. Then we have our Plain Bad Heroines. This is, I guess if I had to pick one, this might be my favorite of the year. This is told in dual perspective, and it's about the contemporary movie making process of a historical murder that occurred in this school. And so in present time, we get a woman who wrote a book about the murders. She's involved in this movie that they're making, and all of the weird, creepy things that begin to happen in the movie set, and to the people that are involved in the process of making the movie, and also what happened back in the day at the school. And it really just was such a great time to read. I couldn't put it down. I loved the writing. I loved the characters. It is so queer. I absolutely love it. It is by no means the perfect story. The end kind of fizzles, and I don't know that she sort of finds it at the end, but it also is open-ended enough that you can, if you're okay with that and like open-ended endings where you can sort of, you make what happens up in your head, then you'll like this as well. But I don't know, I just couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I felt so absolutely invested in the story and in these characters. I had such a wonderful time. I had so much fun. I was creeped out. I laughed. I felt what the characters felt. I absolutely loved my time with this book. I don't recommend it for everybody, but I loved it. Then we have Juliet Takes a Breath, which is a new adult novel about a young woman finding agency, finding out more about who she is, her identity, her sexuality, and seeing two different sides, seeing multiple sides of the life that is advocacy work and being involved in community groups and doing all of that while finding out your own identity and finding out who you are and growing up and sort of being faced with your truths. And I have rarely connected with a book such as this one, because I have felt many of the very exact things that Juliet feels in this book. I have been to those different types of community groups, the ones that claim to be for you but really are completely blinded by their own prejudices and sort of don't recognize that, and then ones that are just speak to your soul and you feel so at home and you feel like you are accepted in your 100% truth. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely love it. There was a couple of parts that I thought were a little cheesy. There's a couple of names and a couple of things that I thought were a little cheesy, but overall, I loved this novel. I think it's a great new adult novel, and I highly recommend it if that sounds like your thing. Then I read The President and the Frog by Carolina Robertis, and Carolina Robertis is one of my favorite authors, and she is a queer Uruguayan author. And this is a political novel, which I don't really read, but it is very, very different to what I imagine actual other political novels to be like. This, it takes on the sort of fantastical a little bit. It is very sort of magical realism. It is about the president of a nation, never exactly named, and a talking frog that helped him survive his time in exile, in prison for his work to free his people and better his nation. And it is very fast, it's very sort of minimal, but it feels like every word matters. Like, they just stripped it of anything that was excessive and just took it down to exactly what you needed to read. And seldom has a book left me feeling so hopeful. So yeah, I mean, Carolina Robertis continues to be one of my favorite authors of life. Then we have The House of Broken Angels. This I read for Latinx Heritage Month, I believe, and I'd had this book for a really long time and only just got around to it. And it's about family, really. It's about so in this weekend we are celebrating a birthday and also a life that has passed, and so the family all comes together to say goodbye to the matriarch of the family and to also celebrate her son, who is now sort of the patriarch of the family as well. And he is sort of also approaching death. He's very ill, and so it's about the family dynamic, their relationship, the things that he grew up thinking and believing, and how he was as a parent. And it's about the ways in which we all interact with each other, the expectations that we have for each other, and the ways in which love can overcome so many of the prejudices that we're born with as Latinos, me speaking specifically as a Latina. And I really loved the story. I loved how it ended. I loved how the family really triumphed at the end, and that belief in family and in love really overcame so much. And I'm upset that it took me so long to read it. I quite enjoyed my time with it. And then another novel also about the Latinx family, but a different dimension of it, and more, is The Five Wounds, and it starts on, I believe, Easter, when the 16-year-old daughter of our, I guess, main character goes up to his house, and yeah, she's pregnant, and sort of says, I'm gonna live here and you're gonna take care of me. He's been separated from her mom, who also had her at around 16 years old, and so it's about him growing up into his multiple roles as man, as son, as father, growing up, learning so much, her growing into her. It's really about growth into our roles, and how unforgiving that process can be, but necessary. And these characters are incredibly flawed and many times very unlikable, but I appreciated so much that despite that, you can tell 100% that they're meant to be unlikable, but the author has such care for them and sort of sympathy for their process, and asks you as a reader to have sympathy for them, and consider that we have all been, at certain points in our life, people who are quite unlikable, who may be quite unlikable, who are making mistakes that we might not recognize the full extent of them and how harmful they can be, but how we can stumble through the sort of recovery process, or the us trying to rectify our lives and ourselves. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated everything that she had to say, because in so many ways, I don't know that I've read a book like that before, where despite the fact that a character is so unlikable, the author is being so careful and tender with them. I think, at least in my experience, it tends to be more that, like, yeah, they're unlikable, and that's kind of how they are, and you're not meant to like them, and then that's just that. And what I'm trying to say kind of goes above that, and it's beyond that. But this, I don't know, this was like, everything felt like it went together. I mean, I have family members, have people in my life that I have made mistakes that I don't necessarily hate them, but I might not really like them, but I recognize their worth, and I recognize that they're trying. And so it's that sort of weird emotion that you can feel for these people, where you're not really forgiving them for their mistakes, but you're allowing them to grow regardless. So yeah, those are, I forgot one. This is editing Roxanne. I forgot Faithful Place by Tana French. That is number 3, I think, in the Dublin Murder Squad series. Let me just double check. Yeah. Number 3, The Dublin Murder Squad, Faithful Place by Tana French. It has thus far been my favorite Tana French. I love Frank as a main character. We talk about his an occurrence, a particular day that happened in his past, and how a body that has been found relates to that day, and it's just a great mystery. Talks so much about family and our obligation to family, and it was just beautifully written. It was so evocative and atmospheric in the best way that Tana French can do, and yeah, highly recommend it. My favorite in the Dublin Murder Squad series thus far. Yes, can't believe I forgot it. My favorite adult books that I read this past year. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. As always, thank you for watching and for listening. I love you all very, very much.